Are we ready for the chat? Are we ready for the chat? Who am I asking? B. Bulilan? Okay. All right. This is the last item of the agenda. We've got Bulelani and Desmond who are going to have a conversation about business. Our last one. Lots and lots of nuggets to take away from this. These are people who have been in business for more than a decade, both of them. Fact. So there's a lot that we can learn from them. Bulelani, please come to the front. Desmond? Desmond, yeah? Desmond? All right, he's here. I'll go and fetch him. I'll go and fetch Desmond while Bulelani starts the conversation. So please put your hands together for Bulelani. And then Desmond will join us. Sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Okay. Yeah, man. How's it been so far? It's been awesome. Did you guys meet new people? People to do business with? Yeah, so I encourage you just to check out the exhibitors again. And I guess this is the last part of the program. Well, the second last. The last is when we get to network more, right? So my name is Bulelani Balabala. For the pleasure of those who might not have picked up my intro earlier on when I did the tea overview. And I think this part of the conversation, I guess in typical, ordinarily you would have this called a fireside chat in Mbawula. You know, I guess, you know, privy to how we grew up in Lokshini. That's how we had conversations. You know, around the fire, Mosum Kukwin, Mbawula. Moses Lalil in Jengami, you know, you light up a fire and the sort, right? And that's where you're able to discuss and chat. And I think no better, and this is a spotlight feature, you know, that talks to someone who's really seasoned, a seasoned professional, a seasoned entrepreneur. And I think most importantly, you know, I think pivotal to this conversation, the co-founder and co-owner of this particular establishment where we are at today. And I remember meeting this young man some years ago. And it was a really funny story because I was abroad and one of the ladies I work with, you know, was driving around here looking for a venue, and then she came here for some reason and found this gentleman. Next thing you know, we are at his venue. So it goes back to it's a small world. You know, I think wherever you go, leave good traces of yourself because it's a really small world. Because I can't imagine years ago if we had left a bad taste in his mouth doing business the wrong way wherever, it would have come back to bite us and you might not have even actually been here today. But Mr. Desmond, so the gentleman next to me, Bob Desmond, Tembu, the co-founder of the establishment, Sprayed View, and the establishment group.
Yeah, thank you, Sanbanan.
I think just by way of introduction, you know, maybe just tell us a bit about, because when I met you, can I mention? Yeah, because when I met him, and you're still there. Not really. I mean, it was the Gauteng Film Commission. And it's such a beautiful thing to see what you've gravitated to. Maybe just by way of introduction, just tell us, you know, who you are, where you are from, and why you now gravitated to this. Of all the business endeavors and initiative, you decided to go into this space.
Oh, Sanbanan, you'll pardon my voice. I'm just recovering from flu. Desmond Mtembu. I consider myself a film practitioner because I operate within the space, say, entertainment. I studied film, never got to make my film, but the reason that I didn't get to make my film was that I asked myself a question, good, once I've made my film, who's going to consume my product? And this was in the 90s, after finishing film school. And then you'd ask yourself, good, I know who's going to watch your film and who are the market when it talks to a market, is that you needed to understand what's your market. At that time, ironically, this place that we are at now used to be a cinema, for those that are from Ekatoras and Dobsonville as well. So you'd always ask yourself, once you've made your product, who would consume your product? And then I ventured into distribution and audience development, because at film school you are never taught distribution. You are taught to create a product, but once you've created the product, you don't know where to take it. So if you take it to SABC and they don't take it, you are stuck with your product. And you'd find that when you look at the industry itself, it's divided into 3 tiers. There are established filmmakers who are creating blockbuster films, and there's intermediate filmmakers who are just doing films for cinema. And then you then find the last band, which are your emerging filmmakers, more especially for Mzansi Magic. And then we then partnered with ETV to start Ikasi Bioscope. Because remember, before Mzansi Magic, there was ETV that was creating content on Mondays. We worked with Umonde to support the creation of this last tier of content, so that you are then able to have a space for young people to showcase their content. Because for you to reach stage 1, you need to start from the bottom, but platforms are not created for you to showcase that product, and then you can end up sitting in the shelf. And so that's what we then looked at. And then we then looked at how then do we create audiences, to say how then do we inculcate the culture of local content appreciation. Because it's all well that in South Africa we consume 98% of international content. So it's hard to break into that space with your local films so that you're then able to make money out of it. And so we then set up audience development initiatives where we worked with Stekineko, then they launched our Stemoribo. Stemoribo, that's the one that was having Cinema Selokshini. And then we had trucks as well that were then taking films around the community. But because at that time the culture of filmmaking being up to the standard, it didn't take up that much, but at least it gradually grew. And I think for us, that's what we looked at. And then we also looked at locations to say, for every film that is made requires a location. And so we then focused on how then do we sell Gauteng as a premier destination for productions. So where we met at the Gauteng Film Commission, my focus was around assisting them to sell Gauteng as a production destination. The Avengers of Ultron that was done, which was a big film, was shot in Johannesburg. We managed to get it to South Africa. Silver Siege, which is on Netflix now, and Collision. And we work a lot. We worked a lot with commercials. So our niche, what we then did is that when you look at the film industry, it's one industry where all professionals are there. There's doctors, there's accountants, there's firefighters, because anything can happen in the movie. And so we then identified a niche for us within the film space, which was distribution, audience development, and locations.
Now, I think just before we even get into the establishment, right, as a business, how important is it? And I think you mentioned something, right, to say that we consume over 90% of the content that we consume is international content. How important is it for us to document and tell our own stories?
It is imperative because I think our local stories, we have rich stories. I mean, when you look at the African history, we have the history of the griots, those that write stories about the Africans. So as South Africans, there's beautiful stories that we have. And even growing up in our townships, we've always heard of Fera the ghost, or Banban. We have not looked into those spaces. We've missed opportunities of how then do we create a content that would sell. I mean, when you look at the beef, Mhlambe as an example, got Casper and this other Oban, AKA, why have we not made a movie about that? Because it could then be a blockbuster. So I'm saying there are a lot of opportunities for us to create stories that will then go a long way.
Now, in the time that you spent, from an audience development perspective, did you find that the South African audience or individuals were open to local content? Yeah,
they are. I mean, all of us that are sitting here have a video that we've created. So it means every one of us here has an interest in the film business because we have the 1 minute videos that we are shooting ourselves. But the issue is, what do we do with that content? How then do you make that content make money for you? With this digital era, how then do you, with the content that you've created, be able to now generate revenue out of it? Because you can monetize from YouTube once you reach a certain number of people. I'm not sure with TikTok, but so there are opportunities for everyone to showcase their content.
Now, here you are, you're this professional who's seasoned, right? A number of years in that space, who's done this. Now you then decide to venture out into the entrepreneurial space.
Yeah.
I know that for a number of people that I've had the opportunity to chat with, who've migrated from the professional to the entrepreneurial space, or some of the things that they've shared with me is they've got the shock of their life. Because entrepreneurship from the outside looks a certain way. When you're in it, it looks totally different. How was your experience moving from professional to now a full-time entrepreneur?
Yeah, no, it was a real shock. Because I get you from a distance, you always think, good, and so on and two, because you have networks. You know that you know someone from Old Mutual that you can speak to fund, and it's not that case. Because because you're associated with that particular brand that you're doing. Once you move in space, more to Desmond, GFC, what? Chief, Asakumbu. So it was a shocker because you had to rebrand yourself and also be able to now make sure, like sister spoke, Uguti, don't focus mostly on your friends when you run your business. So because you have networks that you've created in the industry, you think those are the people that will support you, and they are not. So you end up being supported by people that you don't know. So that is why it's important to, like you say, good networking is key and important.
Sure. No, and I find that to be very interesting because I think the assumption would be, labantu phila nabo yibo abantu abazokuxhasa, abazokubhekela, abazokusiza, and it's not. And I think that's maybe what makes the journey a little bit difficult to ascend.
Yeah.
But now, why this? I mean, of all the businesses you could have gone into, or ideas, or whatsoever you could have done, why did you decide to say, Yazin, I'm going to venture into this particular space?
One, I think also COVID. It was a response to COVID because the industry also died down a bit, and you also needed to generate revenue, and you wanted to remain within the realm space for, say, entertainment. And so you saw an opportunity with this a space like this to say, when you look at the location, is that there are no spaces where you can just go and eat proper outside of our chain stores. So you needed to create a platform where a family can come, bazodla as a family, right on a Sunday or even during the week. So bringing izinto as a right to closer to our communities, but also providing an entertainment where it's all relaxed. Because Tina, everyone here, if you come, you all are seated like this, and you're all served. No one goes into the bar to buy anything. So we're saying everyone is a VIP, create a platform where everyone feels comfortable to come and experience the class above. So I think that's one of the reasons. And also, I mean, because you love cooking, is that you also have a space where you are able to experiment on the food that you create as well for the market.
Yeah, so it's I think for me, I think some of the things that sort of, and I think for us as a team, you know, considering we didn't even think when we came here of load shedding, I forgot about it, you know. I was in a country with no load shedding the past 2 weeks, right? So when I got back, I'm like, you know, we didn't even think about it, right?
Yeah.
And I think without folly, but I appreciated I think for me, the forward thinking of the fact that there was backup power.
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to what you were saying, right? To say the township spaces are not mediocre. You know, we are not in a mediocre place, but we've got the right responses for anything. We've got, and I think the amenities like Wi-Fi and the sorts, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I look at you, you know, I think I sort of track back 2 years ago when I first met you. I look at you now, you know, you don't look like you're dealing with any issues. And that's the thing, right? Because there's no one who stands in front, or no one who walks around with their problems written on their forehead, right?
Yeah.
You know, you look like you've got it all together. Is that the case? Do you have to deal with issues like the rest of us?
Yeah, no, you have to. I mean, even the staff sometimes were patalang away 34 because You might like a Shanghai, you know. And now you rent also, you must try and negotiate with the landlord to then say,
yes.
I'll pay you back. So every business has its challenges, and we must just press on. And I think the effect of it is that at least we've hired abantu kwala eLokishini. So bawukhuluma naye kahle because I would treat people well, and also explain ukuthi ngicela ukupha ngiyi-33 nyana ngisasenenkinga. They understand, but it's something that you don't want to encourage. You go through challenges. Is that the shop itself was affected by looting, and so when we had to relaunch, we had to start over again. So you would go to NEF to raise funding. Then it takes time, but you now must run the shop, so you need to find money. Because these chairs are new, because you have to invest in new furniture, so that you are then giving people the nice standard and class. So it then means whatever monies that you make, because we relaunched in November, is that me personally and my business partner, we have not started making money. All that it comes through, it goes back to paying off the debts and making sure that at least you're keeping the space proper as it is. Because we also don't want to move away and then rather push for our numbers. Because sometimes in the might it does not make money. But I want more there's more money because they are more relaxed. So for us, slowly, gradually, maybe springtime, at least you'll start making profit. But for now, it's still that struggle where you are raising and hustling, making sure that you are shangan.
Wow, I think let's give that a round of applause, right? Because those are gems, and I think for me, the one that, I don't know, your takeaway is good. We're also going to open up for questions, right? Much later on. But the gem that opens up for me is the one where, build a good relationship and rapport with the people around you. So that when you have challenges, you don't have to ignore my phone.
Yeah.
Asaphendule private number.
Yeah.
Asaphendule number ya client you run. Because that doesn't solve any problems, right? But being able to create and manage the right rapport means that you can have, like similar to you, the audacity to say, no, Lalel, I won't be able to pay you on the 25th, I'll pay you on the 38th. I'll pay you on the 44th of the month because the situation is the situation, And I think the second part for me, that is a beautiful takeaway for me personally, because I'm sitting here not just as someone who's asking you questions, but also as an audience member who's got the privilege to sit here and ask a question, right? Is delaying the gratification. Because I think that someone else, sometimes, we go into things and we want immediate success, immediate victory. And the fact that you could just take that money and haphazardly shut the place down, but you're consistently reinvesting in the growth of the business. But now just give me an idea, what has kept you, just even beyond the establishment, what has kept you inspired? Because here you are, Ukhule Lokishini, you've done extremely well in your professional work, but over and above that, you then decided to come back and do something Lokishini. But the reason why I want to weave that in is you did not just bring a place Lokishini where you just want to suck out all the money from. You've hired locally. You consistently are putting back money into recreating the experience that people experience here. What inspired that, and where does that come from, that passion to develop your own?
I think it's growing up, it's a support structure. Because when we were growing up, we never had a support system right. We'd always look up to Clever, at least to Brasban. But in election, you'd always think that's the right way to go. So, and for me, I think it's then said to myself, because I'm growing, it's not that at this thing because you want to shine, but it's because you see an opportunity and value in election. There's more money in election than anywhere else.
That's true.
And if you give them proper class, you are then going to reap the benefits. But don't about 30 for granted. I want to just make sure that a lot of things are there. So I think for me, and also the establishment itself, it's not just an eatery place, but it's a space where we also do community work. We are partners with Wheels of Change, where we did something around the International Day of Disabled Persons. We ran a 4-day festival where we invited business to come and speak to people living with disability. We had a sports activity outside in partnership with the gym. We got them to come and who are DJs, Vosloorus music and film, and we watched film. So everything that I do, there's always a bit of film. in it. So, and also we get involved in back to school campaigns and various other programs. Because what we are then saying as a space is that it's not just a space where uzodla uphuze kuphela, but also it becomes a space for businesses that are here to come and have their meetings here. Get Wi-Fi connection, uhlalele phezulu ngafoni uthi bafethu ngithi 10 cela kule town tower 10 sifuna ukubamba meeting, then we set it up for you nicely, connect you to Wi-Fi, have your meetings, provide them with lunch, or if you want to come and just do your research, you're able to come to a space that is open, because we open 7 days a week. So we serve from breakfast to lunch and dinner. So we close at 11 or 12 during the week. So it's always open for everyone. So for us, it's not just a platform for Ukudla noPhuza, but also a platform for networking. So that's why I was very passionate when you then said you're coming here to say, this is a place for all the entrepreneurs to come and use on a time-to-time basis.
So I don't know about you, right? I don't even think you've got an excuse if you're in Vosloorus, you're load shedding. I don't even think, because I think what you've done is, it's not even just a restaurant any longer. It's an economic hub.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's meeting the municipality where municipalities have failed with their LED offices and the innovation hubs, because you're able to come in here and do your work. You know, the narrative, which goes back to, and I think what I'm loving, is the rewiring of the narrative that says that if it's in Sandton, if it's in the suburbs, it's number one. No, if it's right here, and it is number one. So which is why when I started earlier on, I was like, it would be an absolute tragedy if you left here without sharing this beautiful place, so that tomorrow, even your colleagues, your networks must know. Because my biggest passion is to say simply this. You know, when you come across when you encounter a brand or an individual who doesn't just invest, but takes pride and reinvests beyond them making money, you know, with the various programs that are done, that is where we must redirect our funds. And that is where we must redirect our baby showers, our functions, our meetings, our societies, and all that stuff, so that we develop the places that will develop our communities. Because that's the only thing that's going to impact the growth of our communities. Because other than that, then we are chasing we are chasing clouds. We just want to be seen to be looking good, to be looking great, but not driving impact. But if we're really serious about this whole conversation, a township economy, this conversation we're having here and what Des has just mentioned, that's what revitalizing the township economy actually is. Be in a place, plant yourself, reinvest, plug into socio-economic community activities, reopen up the place for people to be able to come, not just to order food, like you said, you can come here and do research. Your kids now have a safe haven. So I don't know, I think, I don't know. I'm an audience member, like I say. Oh, yeah. But just tell me, what was your lowest moment in business, or moments? What was your highest as well? Or vice versa, whichever one comes before the other.
Yeah, I think sometimes your lowest moments, they come in disguised as they are a blessing in most cases. Because I had a contract, I think, with the Gauteng Film Commission, where you do these projects for them and create these great initiatives. But with government, there's always politics. And so they then push you out because of factions or whatever. But then you realize that once you're outside, it was a blessing in disguise, because you are then able to rebrand yourself and position yourself as an individual who can stand on your own. And sometimes when you are pushed out of something, that's when you push harder. Because I know it's not easy to just quit umsebenzi and start something up. Because there's always this thing, but once you are pushed, it pushes you to now make sure that the food must be there. And your highest moment, I think, has always been to create networks and set up such initiatives that beyond it, the bigger plan is also to have a studio and some recording booth upstairs, so that you're now beginning to decentralize access for our townships. Because that initiatives, I set it up. There's one in Kagiso, and then there's another one in Etwan. but they're not operational because you remember once it's your idea, you set it up and then you leave, nothing happens. But it's something that one wants to carry on to then say, how then do you create such platforms becomes an economic hub where musicians who needs mastering of their content don't have to travel to town, but they can easily walk in to have a facility here. When you've made your film and you want to do offline and your music video, you can always come here. So that's the bigger picture and the bigger plan that we're working on, to then say, you set up an establishment like that so that it then becomes that whole space for everyone to get an opportunity to grow in their business.
Now, Protest, but now, you know, how do you then deal with imposter syndrome? Because I don't know if like you, it happens, you know, it happens where, you know, was told also saying that way, where you question whether or not you deserve to be there. You know, I think sometimes our biggest disposition and our biggest challenges as entrepreneurs are in our minds because, you know, you think of yourself and you say, hey, Maraminaxi Yimi, Clover. I don't think I can be on 100 shelves. I'm not worthy yet. You know, I don't think I can talk to the CEO yet. I don't think I can talk to the head of the department. I don't think I can talk to the leaders or whatsoever. I think that my product is too small. So a lot of us suffer from that mindset, but we call it, I'm starting small. We are not really being honest about the actual growth. Some of us, on honest fact, you know, your product is small and you are starting small, but sometimes we run away from being great and we call it, I'm starting small, or I don't want to take on too much. But that's the inferiority complex, and that's where, you know, you know, that's where we really just undermine our power. How do you work around that each and every day? Because you've built up this beautiful facility, which is here, and you're managing it excellently. How do you work around that imposter syndrome that says, do I have the right to compete? Nabo.
Yeah, no, I think it takes time because we all grew up with that whole inferior complex that you need to fight as Kolwen. So that when you go into business, you know that those things are some of the things that you can accept. Because you always thought, Mbawula, something like this, was to Ufunguzen's News Cafe, or something like that, you know. But you then press on to then say, let me do it and see how far it can take me, you know. And you take the risk, you know, which is a challenge because as much as you take that risk, you'd still find prophets of doom that say, I'm a few months now, but then you grow the business. I mean, there's this one here, there's the one in Alex. Last week we opened in Pretoria, a coffee shop.
Let's give him a round of applause for that.
So you then, and also you then get to understand with this kind of business, once you want to start making money, at least you must have 3 or 4 of these, that's when you now begin to generate income. So you do away with those, but they're not easy. And support system from family is also critical, and your friends.
So one of the biggest components or most important components of any business is a team.
Yeah.
And I think it's also the most important, but also the most difficult, right? I know I struggled for many years building a team and setting up my team. And I think it's an ongoing process. I don't necessarily think we can always go get it right because there's a lot of dynamics. You know, what went into you sort of putting together a team to sort of work with, you know, and were you also like me, the person who felt like I'm the only one who can do this right, and let me not relinquish any or delegate any services to anyone because I'm the only one who can do this. Because sometimes that's what happens to us as entrepreneurs. You know, you birth the thing and you feel like, give me pelo yazi land.
And sometimes now the team leo to your killer right, especially in this business. I mean, when we started this thing, is that all our waiters, we didn't want the experience, we just wanted to move to a selection. But I get obvious, more so cool, you're getting to understand the lay of the land, and you always are assuming what you know right. The next thing will not quite. So it's always with the team, you always have to go back and forth to reassess the team. Because you have these ones that are there with you for a good intention. There are those that are going to take advantage of the situation. And you don't even know who are those. Or those that are taking advantage of you, you think they are the biggest loud hailers, can't know. So it's always how then do you keep strong and keep your head up to focus on what you want. Your vision, state your vision, stick to it. And then if you don't stick to the vision, whoever the team is, then you unfortunately let them go, which is not a good thing, having to release people, but sometimes you'd have to go that extreme.
Yeah, and I think to the entrepreneurs in the room, I remember one gentleman saying, you know, hire slow, fire fast. That goes against all, what's in, what's that labor union?
Labor Relations Act,
No, not COSATU, man. The one that take us to when we fire.
CCMA.
It goes away, CCMA. And we're not saying be negligent with it, but I think be very, very cautious. And also don't fear delegating and huddle, you know. Delegate the work, have a time to where you delegate work and you huddle. Huddle means it's the feedback session. Feedback sessions are not necessarily for feedback sessions for the work, but it's feedback session on how the person has done the work. So we're constantly reinventing ourselves because there's only one you. And after a while, you know, you burn out. Because whatever you started as a passion, you know, ends up running you down. Because the challenge of business sometimes for this is we start businesses sometimes because we are good mechanics. And you are working as a great mechanic at a big shop. Or you're working as an amazing person who used to bake bread and you're good at baking bread. So you now start selling bread, but then we forget, Guti, there's so many components of running a business that what caused you to start becomes 1% of what you need to do. Because now you must be an accountant, a salesman, a cleaner, a security guard. How then did you work around these multifaceted components? Because sometimes when we think, here's an owner of a business, we think this hot shot. But when you start up, you're dealing with, you are the admin person, you are the head of accounts, you are the head of finance, head of PR, head of talent management. How then did you work around these multidisciplined?
I think the good thing with this establishment is that at least there's a good team that we work with. I get here and you find that they've hired someone new. I don't have to be consulted because you know good, at least you have a great team that are delegated to deliver the task, because at the end of the month there are targets that must be met. So all that you need to do as the business owner is to have performance measurement indexes where you are then able to check their performance and give them targets and be able to sit and monitor on that. So one of the flaws that we don't do as businesses or entrepreneurs is that we are not running it as corporate, where there's HR policies in your business, there's financial management policies, your petty cash policy. So how then do you use petty cash? Your HR policy, you can't just fire someone because they are 5 minutes late. When you pay them 5 days later, who fires you? You know, so there are processes where you are then able to have charges so that you avoid these into the CCMA. But also it's not a nice thing to lose them. So if you run your things succinctly, making sure with all the processes that are within corporate are implemented in your business, and then you are covered.
Yeah, because I love what you're saying, right? Because I think most cases with us as small businesses, we think of it as an aftermath. And we become reactionary, especially even with things like compliance, right? It's only when those documents are required that we run and we get those documents, you know? I think in your view, Brett, how important is it? You know, I think you've sort of touched on it, but how important is it to sort of have your hand on the pulse of what's going on in your business every single moment, every single day?
Yeah, I think it's very imperative because for you as well, because you grow in that business, because even from the managers here, is that I got to learn a lot from them because they've been in this space for a while. So being involved, you get to understand what goes on and what happens. Because behind the scenes in this business, there's just quite a lot of work that is happening. And so you also need to get involved on a daily basis, not just because our team, but also because you also want to learn and grow and properly understand the business, which is not just about food and alcohol, but behind it, it's also about the human factor that you are working with. How do you interact with your customers? Because in most cases, if you're not around, I want to abase or so you always have to be in people's faces so that they know who to call. You know, so it's those relationships and networks. Because how I got into this business is also through network. Because the guy who was running it, I got to be a client of his, and of course later I would then say, Chief, but I want in because you are missing 1, 2, and 3. So it took time, but I was a patron myself. but they then had to turn around at some point to now becoming a co-owner. So it means networking, and it's important in everything that we do.
Now, there's a lot of conversations around getting, I love the networking, right? Because that's a super important one. I think we've been touching on it throughout the day. We've done the networking exercises. Even after when we close off here and you're grabbing something to eat, please continue to at least leave. I know Sue said 5. Leave with as many contacts as you possibly can, because cross-integrate, and then also act as the cross-integrational bridge that is able to link people here with other people that you might know either from work or in other business relationships, so that you build a bigger and a better network, right, of individuals and also of entrepreneurs. Huh? Oh, I thought you were giving me a high five. I can't walk there. But now, Brett, just give me an idea. So when I look at this establishment, especially a lot of entrepreneurs, I think I'll just park the question that I had a bit. But, sometimes, as entrepreneurs, we've got this mindset that says, we can't start because we are waiting for 1, 2, 3. And as a result, we end up procrastinating and delaying our start. We either whether it's undermining ourselves, or we say that we are waiting for the right sort of funding, or whatsoever the case, and it delays us. How do you work around the start? And what advice would you have for someone who's consistently doubting themselves or undermining their start?
Yeah, I think it's starting. Once you wait to be funded to start your vision, it will take forever. Sometimes you must just risk it, and with whatever that you have, and put it aside and invest in your project. Because with this one, obviously, you've been trying to raise funding to get money from ITC so that you buy into it, but it takes forever. So the little that you invest in your own business, and then it makes you committed, because then you make sure that you are there every day, because your interest, it's your money that you've invested. It's not someone else's money. So once you invest your own, you dedicate more onto your business. Once bakubolekile or bakuphi as a grant, you never pay attention to that business. So sweating it out, uhlala unganamali at the end of the month, where ungazi ukuthi uzohlanganisa inani, it makes you grow, because you go through those tests to become a testimony. But I've built this on my own.
Let's give that a round of applause. I like that. Just one last question from me. One last question from me, and then I'm going to ask the team to move the mic around to people. Abanembuzo. Esikhathini esiningi, when we run businesses, and I think there's a notion as well that says, it's my business. So the business's money is my money. So I can go into the business and swipe a gas, swipe a chicken licken, swipe establishment, swipe Yonkindao. How important is it to build this business back on the back of what you said, right? As its own corporation with the right systems and the right processes, so that it's self-governed, as opposed to it's Bulelani's business, but Bulelani is the business, so it's Butazong.
And I think it's some things that we learn along the way. I think a few years ago, me and a couple of friends, we had a business idea where we raised funding and got money to do project. So we're so excited. So we went around Saswaipa Yonki into July, but you learn through the process, then you realize with Aman, this is not the right way to do business. Sometimes we must learn the hard way. I've learned the hard way. You once was reckless with the little money that you got. You thought, is cut. So it is important to divide, to make sure that whatever it's for the business must carry the business through. But sometimes it's also a challenge, because you have to also borrow money from your own savings to invest in a business. So by the time business is right now, we feel like so it's not an easy thing to do, which I must admit, but we try harder and press on.
But I like that because it's real. I like that because it's real life lessons, and I think it's important because you see entrepreneurship. And I think that's how we are able to break through the sound barriers of getting to the next level. Because the reason why it frustrates a lot is because we've mispresented a lot of things. And this is what I say to a lot of my friends. Some of them are in the media. You know, they look perfect on media, but it's misrepresentation. You know, the business is not making any money, but the business is profiled on every media platform, but the business is winning all the awards. But it's not profitable. But when the individual is talking about the business, they're talking about we are the number one, we are the best, we have never been funded, but they've been funded. So I think having real and honest conversation breaks through the barrier of what can actually be done so that we don't have young people that are frustrated in starting their business but still keep questioning, but why is my business not moving quicker than Morgan? You know, but he didn't get funding, but he got funding, it's just not telling you. So that we're able to also then unpack the organicness of starting and growing a business the right way. Okay, this one I'll ask you when we close off. But anyone who's got a question in the audience, maybe we'll take 5 questions before we eat. Okay, I've got the gent in front, gent there, the lady, got the gent here, and the lady. Okay, I'll start with you, sir.
Right then, hope you're good. I just wanted to know,
Do I answer?
what, you said you started your business like during the COVID times, right? Why at that time specifically? Because the restaurant business at that point in time was seeing flames. 1, obviously restricted people coming in. 2 was the alcohol ban. And then 3, later on, you got hit by looting again. So what made you go into that business? And 2, what made you still believe that, you know, you're still gonna wanna push this establishment? And then my second question is the aesthetics. I see you like the color black. Why specifically the color black and gold, and what does that resemble? And my last question is, in terms of privileges, what privilege did you have that helped you to be where you are? Because as the brother had just mentioned there, that, you know, funding, people don't speak about funding, but also things that you know deep down that this was a privilege that you had that helped your business grow. Yeah, so those are my 3 questions. Thanks.
Should I respond? Yeah, maybe. Okay. Yeah, with regards to why I invested during COVID, I think it was cheaper to invest in this business because it was down. Remember, much economics of scale. But even this guy was at a time when I wasn't sure what's going to happen. So for me, it was an opportunity to invest at its lowest because I wouldn't have gotten it at this rate had it not been COVID. So I also identified an opportunity in that, knowing very well it could take forever, but you know once you've invested a little, you're able to benefit from it. And then the issues of the colors, I think the color black and gold, I think for us it was just a class to say with our blackness, but also the gold, the fact that we interpret it with wealth and that it's welcoming and it's warm. Going to the third one, the privilege. Yeah, the privilege was the funding because we had the funding from one of the sitters. So outside of this business, we also have an NGO. So we have projects that we run with Health and Welfare Sitter. So there was a big project that we were supposed to do with them, and so it was supposed to take place in KZN. And so it happened, but along the way, then we are stopped because of COVID. And so there was little money that was left, and as opposed to taking it to your yield, you then redirected it to this business.
Okay, Nyabong. Okay, I'm going to off-ramp a bit. One question, go Bamtembu, and then another go Budala. Okay, Bamtembu, do you have plans of probably franchising the brand? Because I don't want to lie, it's a very exclusive brand. My take. Even if Batuzinza in News Cafe, so be it, it's fine. News Cafe, I say, kasi, it's okay. So do you have any plans in probably pulling out and franchising? And then Bulelani, if you could just tap on it, I don't know, probably I missed it, Angazi. What business are you into? Probably I'm going to interview you now. What business are you into? Just give us a bit of a feedback. Besides ET, what are you into and your history in it? Thank you.
Yes, I think with franchising, we don't call it franchising that much. It's going into partnerships. So if we are to open a booking, it makes sense for us to partner with someone from Espokeng so that you're able to run your business profitably. So we are always open to engaging people that sees establishment in their areas. Then we go into partnership for that specific shop.
Yeah, so, yeah, I'm never on the spotlight here. But no, so I ran a printing company for, I think, the better part of 16 years. That was based at Mbawula. So it started off as an internet cafe. But before the internet cafe, so I started with my first deal that I negotiated, which led into business. I remember it was in 2006. I made 15,730. I remember because it was a lot of money. And I remember not even having a bank account. All I had was a registered business with CIPC. And it was with Rosefield High School. Abashashaya, they gave me their money. I remember this lady sitting in the office asking me, you know, who should we write the check to? That's a good opportunity because I don't have a business account. I said, well, write the check to me because if we're busy with auditors. So if you write the check to the business, it might take forever. So this white lady, you know, begrudgingly wrote the check to me. I remember walking from Rosefield to Kempton Park, Figure Standard Bank. It's, you know, I want to cash a check. It was back then. Maybe 50 rand. I'd go to the bank. He'd write a check. I'd go to the bank, and then bengi keep a little ID. This guy was like, the money is too much. So that then led to me opening up an internet cafe, you know, making anything between 180 to about 380 rand a month for over 6 to 7 years. The turning point in my business was in 7.5, 8 years. So in that time, I'm selling ice cream, I'm selling stationery, you know, I'm selling amagwinya. Well, any business that has to do with food I've left because I ate that food. So I know good for a fact, FMCG, I'm terrible. So I don't even think I'd run this business alone. I'd need a partner to keep me honest. But then we did that, and then the business grew into print, and then from there we then started consulting. So we then consult corporates, I think through T, for enterprise supply development, fund management, and a lot of that stuff, yeah. Thank you.
Short that there's, like you, I met him at GFC way back, and he was the only responsive person, Lapaya. He's a people's person. He was the director there. You being the director of such a big establishment exposes you to a lot of people, a lot of influential people, and your network is very big, and you know people that can make things happen. How did you use that to your advantage, or also been say I'm a contact labo now from your time at GFC?
Yeah, I think, for example, the Health and Welfare CETA project that I mentioned, it was through a network that I met at the GFC, who was a board member at the GFC and happened to be the chairperson of the board that side. And so I think the fact that at least we've met before, and I've always been straight up, I've never been a shady guy. So it's always easy when I call on Paul Mbawula to say, Chief, it's easy because we were funding filmmakers, I must say, but there's not even a single filmmaker that I took money from when we were funding them. And so those relations made it easy because when I then call you to say, hey, I'm shooting a movie, please borrow me your kit. Uzangboleka because of the relationship. Angizange ngakunoka, angizange ngakuthathela imali, ngokuphe mhlambi 500,000, 30, 50,000. So you've always been fair to people. And so those relationships, it's easy to go back to them because you did not mess them up. So I think that is key as well, to say how then to maintain these good relationships. Because it's easy, man, it's easy to put into a million up to 10%, but it's short term. So it doesn't take you long. So, but the relationships that you've created and the fact that you did not take people for granted, it keeps you going. That's why you are able to call to say, let's do a project in the Health Wheels of Change. We are now going to be doing a project called Youth with Disability Audiovisual Campaign around about 4 townships in Ekurhuleni. And these are some of the relationships that you've created. And they are not just pulling your favors, but it's because you understand what is it that they are missing. So you sort of come up with projects that are unique to what no one else is doing. I mean, we're planning a huge festival on disability around December. No one has done a film festival on disability. There are filmmakers who are disabled, there are performers, there's everyone. So it's to identify a niche and go through those networks that you've created, and they will never turn you down.
And I think much too is passion there, which is, I think, for me, encapsulates inclusion. So one of the first things he said to me when we said we're doing this, his question was, are disabled people considered and included? And I think that's mindset of inclusivity is the mindset that we need to take into every mindset so that we don't leave money on the table. Because sometimes we leave money on the table because we overlook certain individuals on certain markets. So we are busy chasing the big fish, but you're forgetting what 10 Bulelani is giving you 10 rand, gives you the cash flow that you need to stay afloat. Mama?
Sanbonani? Unelisiwe wakadlulu okulumayo from i-company ebizwa i-Sakisizwe Concerned Community. Nginombuzo nyana omncane bese ngizoba nesicelo. Sibonge kwithi for ukusivula amehlo because sihleli nezinto esingazazi bese sithi ama-business wabantu abamnyama ayafela cause asithandani kanti i-lack of information. Siyalibonga ethuba. Sibonge futhi baba ukusiboleka indawo yakho. Ngelanga le-25 leli bungayenza ezinye izinto ngalo zokufakela imali but ukuthi uhoste thina sisafufuza sizofunda sibonga kakhulu. Bengicela ukubuza ukubaluleka. Nike nichazela abantu ukubaleka kwama-security companies because thina sidila nge-security and abanikazi bama-business ezinye izinto bayazibala bese bangayibali kakhulu le ndaba yokubaluleka kwe-security emakhampanini wabo ezindaweni zabe basebenzela kuzo. Sicela ukubuza ukuthi i-security ne-safety yama-business wenu ibaluleke kangakanani and impact ebanayo kuma-business wenu heyiphi? Ngiyabonga.
Yeah, no, I think especially for this kind of establishment, excuse the pun, you do need the security because utila ngabantu aba different. And also because we try and attract abantu aba decent. But angithi masekuphuze sekuyengale ama characters abantu change. So security is important even for us that we try and engage with securities companies to also look after e-business yet. When you based group, ma'am. Okay.
Greetings, everyone. So, as a seasoned entrepreneur, I just wanted to ask you, as a business owner, when do you know when to quit? Because usually there are businesses that you start, and then you are under this culture that you should not give up. But usually sometimes there's power in quitting. There's power in saying, okay, this isn't working, and I need to move on to something else. When do you know, okay, it's time to move on to something new and I should try something else? Because we as an entrepreneur, the minute you become an entrepreneur, you are under this culture that you should not quit. But then you spend 40 years not moving from the ground because you are maybe just stubborn and ignorant. You are sitting with the business idea that has become irrelevant over the years instead of just moving on and doing something else. So when do you know when to quit?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think as a business, you must always evolve and diversify. That is why my space is film and TV, where we run a catering company and we do locations. But with this one, you meshed it with it. But you always know when to quit, especially most of one with our ideas. Look at the industry itself, the film industry, is that it's now being replaced by a drone. One shot, a sky raper shot, is now shot by one person controlling a machine. And at Dala, there was a person who's flying the helicopter. There's a person who's holding the camera. There's a focus puller. So something that was done by 4 people is now done by 1. So that's why it's important that as a business, you must always sit back and then think to yourself, how then do you evolve? Should you fail to evolve, how then do you diversify? Case in example, Kodak missed an opportunity because they never thought to go to ama camera abo. They will go instinct. So now cell phones took over. Who needs to buy a Kodak camera? Because you can now use your phone with a lot of megapixels. So reading, Siko spoke about reading and researching in your own craft. And don't shy away from quitting. We've had projects that you've done, you've quit on them. You've had a project we're doing here, online licensing in Limpopo. It failed. You stopped. You've invested money, but you stop and start over again. So there's no harm. You must just develop a thick skin.
So I think on the back of that, it's a very good question, right? But sometimes we become very sentimental as creators with our products, and sometimes you die with the product because you believe there's only one way. And I think for me, and everyone has got their answer, but the moment you stop asking yourself, you run out of answers for why and how. Because every time you ask yourself why and how in your business, those are shift questions that drive innovation. That means that maybe we must sell the building and reinvest in 1, 2, 3. Maybe we must re-look at the value chain that we play in, because I think in most cases we are in business, but we don't understand the value chain. All one focuses on is I sell ama yogurt or I sell ama sweet. That's it. But one doesn't revisit the whole value chain to say there's a logistics element. Who are you buying them from? There's a wholesale element, There's a retail element to this. There's a B2B there's a B2B and there's a B2C. Because being able to fully identify the whole entire value chain will give you the strength to then say also, and the smartness to say, if you also then are going to diversify, you can even diversify within the discipline, and that's what I love about what you did, right? Is diversifying, the focus is film, diversifying into the restaurant market, but still with the focus on film. And I think that then for me becomes a super, super, super important thing for you to consider. But the moment you run out of those whys, then it's time for you to jump over, right? Because at the end of the day, you start this business, one of the biggest drivers for us when starting businesses is we create these amazing businesses, and I don't know what your reason was, but for me, it was to put bread on the table back then. But then the moment I was able to achieve that, it was to create employment and, socio-economic impact in my immediate community. But then there comes a time where you then evolve into new industries through networks and being exposed. Then it's time for you to either sell or hand over. Then it's important for you to detach, because sometimes when you take too long holding on to that thing sentimentally, it ends up killing you, because it drags you all the way down. So I think that becomes important for you to always have your hand. And I think that's where then it becomes this conversation. Then, on the back of all the stuff we've learned today, this is the inspirational part of the day, right? Because this is when then it becomes important to build a community. What is a community? 2 or 3 individuals that you can share ideas with. Find those 2 or 3 individuals here or at home or wherever that you can spar ideas with, so that you can have someone else who's sober enough to say, listen, you're being sentimental, this is what you need to do, then you move forward with it. So the last question is this gentleman over here. The mic, second last. Sure.
Okay, Mbawula, thanks again. A question here, partnership is very critical. How do you know which you've got the right partner to work with? Because, when the planning part comes, you become so excited. We say, we've got how many townships? We've got Inanda, Ntuzu, Magwamashu, Teflop, Mafike, all these townships. The township economy generates 2 billion annually. But when it's the working part, it becomes different, more especially when the business starts to make money. And then, when part, when they ask you, when they ask the CEO of Nokia, what happened? The only things he says, we refuse to change. So how do you know when it's time to move? When the security company, how do you know it's time for me to go digital much? And then, I have a keen interest in township tourism. ngiphatha kabi ukuthi when you speak about Township tourism, people think of Ivilakazi Street in Soweto, whereas nathi sinayo history yethu. You've got the first airport in Africa, like Katlong, next to Lake Tutul. It's something to talk about, something to document about. So, ngifuna ukwazi ukuthi, how can we then document our own history? Ikwazi ukuthi isilekelele push Township tourism. And the submission yami ile funding ukuthi those who have walked the path before, abakudala ku business, how can they assist us in terms of create some sort of a venture capital establishment? Because if uzothi ku business uthulinda government funding, basalinda ama 350 abo namanje abantu awakafiki. So if you are waiting for millions, thousands, it's even worse. Thank you.
Yeah, the issue of partnerships, it's never easy. I think what I've learned is that you've done partnership with friends, and you know those are the worst ones. You've had a lot of businesses that you've set up with your friends, but I must say, one, two, and three. So, and also with partners that you don't know, it's also tricky because you get to know their true personalities. Semi parati go business, and it's never easy. But at least those you are able to manage, because you never become friends; you just become partners. So with my paid partner, I think it's yeah, we have a very cordial relationship. We understand where we want to take this, but also there's always clashes here and there in terms of ideologies. Because coming into someone who's been running it on his own, is that that person probably does not know how to have a partner. So some decisions, you know, why and I want so mangala so I'm full out chief. Are we not in this thing together? This I forgot. So it's always how you nurture those relations. Sometimes you feel not to give up, but knowing very well, get them into the right space, sign contracts, be clear in terms of your deliverables and your milestones, and then you stick to them. And then on the issue of tourism, and I think you're quite right in terms of how then do we document our history. The fact that there was a first airport like Katlong, which no one knows, is that it's the history that we need to put together and create documentaries that would also be educational tools for our schools. So one of the projects that we did before the Gauteng Film Commission, we had what we called audiovisual resource centers. So the aim was to set up audiovisual content within libraries, so that if someone ufunda incwadi in the film ka John Kani, there's one film ka John Kani which is also in a curriculum. So what we're saying is that how then do we create a movie and make sure that kuba nalo movie about that book kuma library, so that a young person can easily walk in and watch the film, so that by the time afunda incwadi, we understand that clearly. So we piloted it a library guidance at Johannesburg. But obviously because of change of governments, so you always have to start over, so you end up dropping it. So documenting our history is critical. And I think now I didn't know that the first airport was in Katlehong. So it is important that we now start identify possible funders that could get you someone to assist with script development research, who can put together a story, and then you understand how you want to shoot it. And venture capital, yes, it's important that we shouldn't rely on government only. Not as black businesses, we also need to also put in something within the kit. Hopefully, right, we can then be able to have our own venture capital to assist fellow businesses to open up. Thank you.
All right, Paul here. Thank you very much, Bolelani and Braden, for the advice. So I think I just have one question. My question is in terms of giving out equity on your company. What do you think of that, and how do you feel about it? Equity in terms of shares.
Yeah, no, I think it's like I say, good. Should there be a space, because our aim is to expand. If we both identify a space that we want to open, we can engage on it. Specifically on that, or general on the group itself. Or you say? Our equity is important. I think you do need people to be shareholders, but now at least at that point you must be at a point where you understand where you're going as a business. Because I mean, if you retain majority shareholder holding, and equity from other businesses also helps you and takes away the burden on it. Because sometimes owning 100% of the business is also risky, because should anything happen, you have nothing to fall on. So equity is important, but it has to be good investors that have the best interest in the business. Because some would want to put in equity and they don't care. All they want to do is come end of financial year, they want the dividends without having to see the challenges that the business goes through. So you have to be involved. I think for me, if you invest in something as equity.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is our Mbawula Chat, and that then wraps up. No, words of inspiration before we close? Just a one-liner, and then Spoo will just come up, we'll close, we'll grab something to eat. Do not leave here without networking. Engage with the exhibitors more and buy the products. Follow us on social media and share. Tag all our stakeholders, the establishment, City of Ekurhuleni making this possible. Proudly say that's got the exhibitors out here. Yeah.
My vision, I think I live by the vision, note I live inspired. So by living inspired, I identify a niche in every opportunity and I take it. So all I'm saying is that let's push on, press on. It's not easy. Sometimes we feel like we want to give up. And at the time you want to give up, Kantizinto, we're going to turn around. So let's just keep pressing on. There is going to be a umvuzo at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think, yeah, definitely, let's give him a round of applause. Yes. And yeah, so the event, just to share, it's streamed live. As Wu has been sharing, and we've had guys from as far as Durban, Cape Town, Limpopo joining in. Thank you so much, guys, for joining in. Share it, and if anyone in the room wants to then go back and watch, this content is live right now. So you can share it with your networks and you can watch it live. The establishment, City of Ekurhuleni, thank you so.
I think also I would encourage you to follow us on our social media. I think our Facebook is Sprayed View, Establishment Sprayed View, and then on Instagram is the Establishment Sprayed View. The other one is Vosloorus, sorry. Facebook is Establishment Vosloorus, and then the Instagram is Establishment Sprayed View. So so maybe what we can do, I'm taking a risk. For those that will follow us in the next 5 minutes, we'll pick one person who's around here, and then we'll just give him a setting of drinks.
And then it's that day of the week and it's that time of the month. Let's give Pratez a round of applause. Let's picture, yeah, picture. Yeah, no, one,